the Redskins season may be over on the field, but it's the offseason that we always look at with this team. And that starts with, of course, the search to replace Jim Haslett as defensive coordinator. And Keith, I'll come to you first on this. There's been a lot of names we've heard. Wade Phillips, Ed Donatel, Joe Perry, Vic Fangio, maybe even if they get permission to talk to him. But in your mind, who should be, or who do you think will be the Redskins defensive coordinator next season?
Well, you could be working with a lot worse group than the names that have come up so far.
Right.
All those guys have track records of coaching pretty well. They were all familiar with the 3-4, which means they can work with the personnel that's already in Washington, although there's not that many keepers necessarily on the roster. There are some guys that they'll be stuck with because of their contracts. I think Fangio or Donatel, either of those guys would be great because they've been associated with great defenses in San Francisco.
Right.
Donatel was defensive coordinator of the Packers in the mid-2000s when they were pretty good defensively. It wasn't just Brett Favre on those teams. But I think probably Wade Phillips has to be the leading candidate. He's a guy who probably reminds you a lot of North Turner, not a great head coach.
Right.
But as a coordinator, he's been in 9 stops, and he's been pretty successful in almost every one of them.
Well, Scott, do you see Wade Phillips as the leader in the clubhouse for this job, or is there someone else you might have in mind?
Yeah, it certainly seems that way now. And the reality is that the absolute best defensive coordinators out there are not going to come to Washington to fix this mess. They're aiming for head coaching jobs that will inevitably open up this year. Yeah. So, like Keith said, I mean, I think it's a decent group that they're picking from. And with Phillips, I think my initial reaction was, are you kidding me? Another retread to replace Jim Haslett. But unlike Haslett, who for years had some of the weakest statistically performing defenses in the league, you go back to Phillips' last stop in Houston, 4th, 10th, and then they really fell off in his last year to 25th in scoring defense. So at least he has some sort of recent track record of performing well as a coordinator.
Well, Adam, does any of those 4 guys jump out at you?
You know, I mean, I would, if I'm guessing who it's going to be, I would guess Wade Phillips, because with the Redskins, you always like the biggest name possible is, or the most like the guy you know the best is probably gonna get the job.
That's their track record. Right?
I would say if Fangio is available from San Francisco, he would be to me by far the best choice. I mean, he was awesome every single year in San Francisco. He had great talent, but this year, even when they went through a lot of injuries with Patrick Willis being out for a lot of the year, and they're
Alden Smith
being out for being knucklehead and being out. That defense was still really good. Their problem was not defense. And going back to when he was at college at Stanford, he took a program that had very little talent and turned them in. Was not as responsible as Jim Harbaugh, but he was probably number 2 on that list for sort of the way Stanford became such a great program. So I would take Fangio if he's available. I don't know. He's probably too good for Redskins. I mean, I don't know why he would come here. I'd also say too, I don't think it's like the fact whether they run a 3-4 or 4-3 should not be limiting because there's no good players that are on the Redskins you need to keep fit into the scheme. Like there's no.
Well, Adam, there's no salary cap for assistant coaches, and Dan Sarah can open his wallet, so that's why all this. So you can look at any assistant because you're going to pay him. But I guess the ultimate question is, no matter who comes here, is he going to be able to work his magic like kind of Rod Marinelli has done in Dallas with no personnel? I mean, the Redskins have about 3 or 4 players we can look at and you say these guys you have to keep. Everyone else you can probably start fresh, right?